Warm welcome to you. We're going to be talking about men's mental health issues in the workplace today. We had a good turnout yesterday, so we ran this session face to face. Get that up in our offices at Gracechurch Street, and so I'm going to be replicating a lot of material that, of course, we covered yesterday. But we only have but an hour with you this lunchtime, so I'm going to get straight into it. Myself, Ed Shaxfield, Senior Principal Consultant for LHH, representing the Leadership and Development Team, UK and Ireland. Background really, financial services. I did that for a few years before joining the military, and I was in the military for 14 years before working for 2 global consultancies since then. My interest in mental health, I think, goes way back. My father suffered 2 huge nervous breakdowns, one when he was 60 and one when he was 70, and the impact on that was devastating clearly to himself, but also to the family and those that knew him. And it really came out of the blue, and it really sparked my interest in mental health and clearly men's mental health, and often the taboos around this and the stigma. And we'll talk a little bit about that over the next hour or so. So that's really where the subject started for me. I'm a trained mental health first aider. I'm a youth qualified mental health first aider, but and those that are familiar with it, the qualification wraps over and is the algae principle, which is applied for those that don't will know it, replicates across to adults as well. So I'm going to be looking after you for this session here today. What are we going to talk about? A little bit of an agenda there. Let's define mental health first of all, and look at some of those common issues and see which ones you've experienced or possibly somebody that you know has as well. Why are we talking about men? So why is that on the agenda here? A little bit of internal intervention and practical support, just to deal with some of those issues initially. Before we talk about supporting you, it's HR Heroes, it's day 2, and some internal processes that can really help, the Wellness Action Plan, and certainly the UK 6 core standards. And I'm going to be sort of showcasing those very briefly and pointing in the right direction of what you need to look at to implement those. All very straightforward and all really useful. By definition, the conversation is a little bit testing. It's a subject by definition of is a little bit depressing, but there is an upside towards the end of the discussion here today. So I'm going to share some good practice principles and how the dial is shifting and how the narrative is shifting as well. So while some of it seems, oh god, this really makes hard reading, I think there's some brighter sides to this conversation today. I hope you get involved. So I'm keen to hear from you if you've joined and you're able to access your chat function there. If you were to define good mental health, how would you define it? And I'll call out possibly some of those. What is mental health? And I'm going to cite the World Health Organization definition once you've had a go at it. So over to you. If you wish to engage on the chat function, type away, and let's see some of the thinking around what are we talking about here around what is good mental health. Are you able to action a chat function?
Yeah.
Quite difficult for you to engage otherwise, isn't it? And thank you thank you there for that comment, Trija, about that. I wasn't aware that it was are you able to access that?
Sorry, it's just not letting me at the moment. I'll work in the background.
Purposes of the time, I'll give you the I'll give you that. And if Dave can get the chat involved, all the better. State of well-being. This is the World Health Organization definition here. State of well-being in which every individual realizes their potential And the bit I've underlined there that I really like is that coping with normal stresses of life and working productively and fruitfully. So it's about able to realise their full life and being able to cope. And I remember thinking back to my father and the mental health nurse that was helping said, your father isn't in a position to make the conversations we were having, those decisions there. He's not able to do that yet. He didn't have the resources, which indicated as we go about being unwell. Let's have a look in just a little bit deeper there about definitions. So look, I think the most important thing, the top element there is we all struggle with times of low mood, stress and anxiety. Anxiety is a driver to get us to do stuff. It's telling us something that's going on, and it can make us feel uncomfortable. And we all go through that. And there's times we feel better and we feel worse. If you look at some of the Mind stuff, the mental health charity Mind, they took a mental health problem. They really define it as over 2 weeks or more, and that's where the issue starts to come in. So it's over a period of time, and it stops us being able to live our lives the way we want it, or you've got a specific diagnosis from the doctor. The statistics at the moment show 1 in 4 people experience a mental health problem in any given year. Anyone who's familiar with the mental health first aid training will have seen this continuum before, where you have got essentially, and I think the point at the top is great, that there are no absolutes here when we're talking about this. It is a continuum from clinically no diagnosis to diagnosis to maximum mental well-being and fitness to a minimum mental well-being and fitness as well. Top right here, well, we're not really discussing that really. No diagnosis, they've got no real challenges, and they've got maximum mental well-being. But the bottom right here is somebody that actually isn't diagnosed, but is suffering some challenges here, has got some issues here. And then over to the left here, we've got someone, okay, that actually, therefore, because of these challenges, is therefore we can give it a diagnosis and is in for mental health. And of course, this allows for someone who's actually coping perfectly well, and that is relevant to all organisations, that they have coping mechanisms in place and are able to deal perfectly adequately with the with what's going on, and they're coping very, very nicely, very well with that, and dealing with those challenges that they have. So there's a broad spectrum here, but what is interesting is, and that comes out in the broader question I might ask you, if we were able to answer, that's good. You might not be, it depends on the day it gets off with the chat function, is the stigma that surrounds it. And I think back to my dad. And, he felt he didn't want people to know that he was, embarrassed about that. And that was an interesting, and I do believe that actually over the past 15 to 20 years, the narrative has changed, especially after the pandemic, about there being less of a stigma, but that preconceived notion is something to be worried and embarrassed about still remains. What are the causes? Numerous causes as to why people may suffer poor mental health. Lots of these, and they do range, even due to some physical causes, down to head injuries. So interesting, those that suffer continued stigma, discrimination, racism, sexism, and so on, that can be a contributing factor. The same, and we'll talk about this in a moment, stress, severe or long-term exposure to stress in the workplace will be a factor there. So there's a number of different reasons as to why this can happen, and interesting about social isolation or indeed loneliness, and what part does the working from home initiative there, the hybrid, or actually those that are completely remote working. How does that come into play here, and what trends might come out from that? Common mental health issues. Let's just have a quick look at that. And Teresa, great! Hey, it's great to see a big smiley face there. I am like a sort of feel like a sort of DJ, maybe sort of talking out and hoping someone's going to call in. Common mental health issues. You will. There's a point. There's going to be a little poll in the moment that hopefully Deo will be able to put out for you. So just bear these in mind, and I'll recap them in a moment. There's a number of different, very common ones here, and the question on the poll will be which ones have either you experienced, don't worry, it's completely anonymous, or you know someone that's got these. So depression can range, obviously mild to severe, low mood lasting a period of time. So mine's definition, though, over 2 weeks or so. Anxiety, I know that's become very much something that there's adverts at the moment for teenagers. It's a really good one. A daughter and a father having a more detailed conversation about some of the struggles this young lady's having at school. And I think it's at the end of 1 in 4, I think teenagers suffer from anxiety. Panic attacks, we're familiar with the symptoms, or, we can recognize those. And OCD, liking things neat and tidy. I'm going to put it out there. I know somebody that suffers from OCD, and it is really a really debilitating challenge for them, really difficult situation. And actually, the friend of mine, he shared that with me because I'd shared about my father, and he felt more confident that there wasn't a stigma within the narrative within our own friendship group, that he could come forward and say, look, I've got OCD and this is how it affects. So if you see me behaving in a certain way, you understand why. It's phobias. And again, these can really, really affect people's lives. Through to, again, some of these quite extreme bipolar. Again, my friend's father had bipolar, schizophrenia, and personality disorders as well, that are problems that your attitudes and beliefs cause you, more long-standing behavior problems in your life, and be borderline, which is impulsive behavior, through to antisocial behavior. Those are sort of the core the sort of core ones, I would call it. I'm really keen to hear from you, if we're able to do that poll, Dave. Which ones have you experienced yourself? And that's just, let's get some engagement going here. What have you got here? And I'll put it out there now. I went through it, and the only one that I haven't directly come across is personality disorder that I've experienced. So interest, depression, anxiety doesn't surprise me. When I really sat down and thought about it, and this is the complicated thing about mental health, you can have combinations of things. Because someone has depression and anxiety, they have panic attacks anyway, which I've witnessed, and it is not pleasant, again, to see that happening in loved ones. I suspect if you threw that into the chat as well, that you can even see just from that wide spectrum there that everyone's experienced something there. So absolutely, that we've all, and the point is made there, we've all come across people that have had, or you've experienced yourself, mental health problems. And this is the whole point of the narrative here we're talking about why should we address men's mental health, is that actually, at the end of the day, it's no different really to physical health, but there's still that stigma around it, and that's what we need to get beyond. So thank you for engaging there. We could only vote for one, fine, but it illustrates my same point that almost every single column had something in there. So okay, well, great. We can see a bit of chat now as well, so we can get a little bit of engagement going. So why are we discussing men's health? Great, we can see something here. And as I said at the beginning, I did warn that men's mental health statistics quiz. But actually, what do you think the percentage is there of percentage of suicides for the men? There's some damning statistics here, and this is really putting it out there, isn't it? 84 men commit suicide every week, 12 a day. It's the biggest, and that was the one that was, for me, I was like, really? When I was researching more of this, really, it's the biggest cause of death in men under the age of 45. Interesting one about younger generation and wanting more mental health support. So percentage there. Throw it into the chat. Let's see what comes up. What do you think? Let's get some dialogue going here. Get rid of this. Where's that? What percentage of suicides are men 40 to 49? 20%. Those are much higher. And again, spot on, Jackie. Thank you so much. It's 70. It's high. It is really, really high. And I sort of walked into this. I mean, I knew about it, and I said, well, I want to really talk about men's mental health. And I started reading this. I was slap-jawed with amazement when I started looking at some of these statistics. I just couldn't believe it. Thank you for those that have engaged there. I really do appreciate that. So there we go. 76%. 76%. And then the last one there. And I'll tell you, and I did some research this morning, so I have got for women as well. So 80% of people sleeping rough are men. At ONS, men have lower levels of life satisfaction. And this is the interesting one, that only 36% of NHS therapy referrals are men. So there's something behind that down then coming forward. What percentage of men never reach the age of retirement? The age of retirement, I said I did a bit more digging around, someone is 65. So which percentage? Number of different reasons. Some of them are linked to mental. There are physical elements here as well. But again, slightly like, oh, really? Just thought I'd cheer you up on a Thursday lunchtime here. But thoughts on that one? What percentage of men don't never reach retirement? And clearly there's something going in there. 55, 40. It's not quite that high, but thanks, Stevie. Thanks, Isabella. Appreciate it. 23, Rebecca, you're pretty on there. Actually, 25 there, Katie. It's 20% women. It's 88%. Sorry, of women never reach retirement. So a real mismatch there. But and I will put out that that's not to negate that the whole population we need to be talking about this. It's a targeted conversation today, but it doesn't negate the importance across the board for everyone to be supported properly here. But it's just some really, really astonishing statistics. So let's thank you and really appreciate those coming into the chat there. Context of men's mental health problems then. Men feeling worried or low has doubled over the last decade. Mind puts out research and a lot of reading was sort of 2009 to 2019. So some of it is and you can only go when they commission these reports. So 20% of men never reach 65, and 8% of that's the UK population. Only 8% of women in the UK reach 65. So we'll say 1 in 5 men never do, which is slightly grim. So I better go for a run later on, I think. So, and this is the thing that bears out in a lot of the research and work I've done, it's only about statistical data you're looking at. And it often, and this is what comes out in a lot from CIPD, Mental Health Foundation, is actually the real story isn't even coming out in the data. So whilst they say, well, actually, looking at this, anxiety and depression slightly lower. But they think, yeah, because they don't come forward. And we'll ask you about that. But because we don't know about it, they're not saying. The thing is do men manifest stuff differently? The literature, the research and experience, I guess, is a little bit different. Men's problems tend to manifest themselves differently. And then there seems to be a degree of misinterpretation about that, whether it's anger, aggression, risk-taking, and sudden explosive loss of control there. That then sometimes gets misread, and therefore sometimes the treatment and the support isn't always there. As I say, we will talk about some positives at the end, but please look after yourself when thinking about some of this stuff. But male suicide rate, and if you can find all the graphs on the ONS statistics anyway, so it is always this seems to be this gap pretty much. So 16 men every 100,000 for males. Females, it was 5.5 100,000. That oscillates slightly, but there's always this humongous gap, which has got people going, yeah, there's something going on here. And clearly we're on with the context of 2019, 2022, and 2023 is not exactly looking cheery either. That the pandemic restrictions and the fallout from that has had a general effect on people's mental health, male and female, of course with that. So what I'm saying is these are factors that are contributing all the time. So I've set out a bit of a stall there. Ed, get it? It's grim. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, it's grim. In your experiences, you've all got, you know, if you're here and you've all got partners, you all know people that are the male. If you're calling in and you're a man yourself, why do you feel that men don't traditionally want to talk about their mental health in your experience? What's your thoughts on that? Have a ponder on that one. Yeah, feel a bit uncomfortable about doing that. I think pride seen as weak, embarrassment, uncomfortable, stigma. Jennifer, thank you. Been told it's not a manly thing. Yeah, absolutely. Embarrassment comes up quite repeated week. So we've got some societal expectations, social gender conditioning, Nadine, spot on, stigma. Yeah, dads don't speak about this stuff. You've got to open a can of man up if you're not feeling very well. That's it. You know, it's this sort of thing. I think, Jessica, I think that's a really lovely comment. They're all really good about, you don't really want to worry someone else because your job is to worry about other people as a parent, isn't it? As a partner. You say, my job's to worry about you. Don't you worry about me. I'll be okay, thoughts. Yeah. And that's a really interesting one there, Jackie. Stiff upper lip, and not enough men talking about it openly. I think that's, you see it, don't you? You get it. Again, percentages, and I apologise, there is, you know, there are a few things there, but I have to go to the data here. But only about a third of men will say, oh, I've been feeling down for quite some time now, actually. Whereas after 50% of women would probably say, look, I'm not feeling great. The other thing is that male friendship groups tend to be based on a shared activity, like actually going to a pub or a bar or something, or perhaps attending a sport, and and wouldn't really be involved in sharing their feelings and worries. Whereas traditionally, women may wish to confide in close friends themselves when they're feeling, you know, feeling low, a low ebb. I also think back to, I was talking about this yesterday in the face-to-face session. It really made me think about, I went to see my friend Matt 2 years ago. Came back home at the end of the evening. It was a pretty early night, you know, got back at 10. Wife said, oh, how's Matt? Fine, fine. Said, did he ask about me? No, don't think so, no. Did he ask about the children? No, not like I'm not. And then she said, what do you then talk about? I said, well, stuff. But I wondered whether there was something here on this slide, and I was thinking about that. Whether, you know, if you really get into some detail there, it's just not on. It's just not there on the agenda. Let's go into this a bit more. And actually, you've told me all this already, which is fantastic. Why don't men talk about mental health so much? Less knowledgeable. What came out yesterday? Somebody was saying actually they just don't, maybe they just don't recognise that it is a problem. They think, oh, maybe this is just what it is, really. Poor emotional literacy. We do I do one of the development programs is know your IQ, know your EQ, emotional intelligence. We talk about that, trying to broaden your palette of literacy in yourself, so that of course if you're a leader, you can therefore read it in others. You've got to know you really what's going on for you to be able to empathise and look after other people, which sure you agree makes sense. So if you've been in a house where there isn't much emotional literacy and talking of how people are feeling, then you're going to grow up with a lack of ability to be able to verbalize that. Because one of the activities in this EQ one is actually sort of checking in with yourself on a regular basis of the day and sort of saying, how do I feel today? What's going on for me, you know? And then sharing that, which I thought was quite interesting when I came across that, because I've not really thought about it, but it did echo something a life coach was talking to me about. He said, well, I always try and check in with myself various times a day and say, what's going on for me at the moment? How am I feeling? What's my energy level like? And building that literacy in themselves. I thought that was quite an interesting point. Fear, that came out yesterday as well. That boys don't cry and don't be a sissy. He was surprised when I pulled him up on it and realised what the impact was. Kelsey, thank you so much for that, because actually we all know that actually releasing that makes you feel so much better. That's the body, isn't it? Letting go of that. Bottling that up, oh, is not good. Not good at all. Thank you for that honesty there. And fear. Fear, they say, well, if I go to the doctor and say, oh, I'm really not feeling good, what's going to happen next? What will happen to me? Well, they'll talk it through with you, but stigma, preconceived ideas about this, and so have some talking therapy. We're going to chat to somebody. It won't necessarily be like, here's a stack load of antidepressants here, off you go. In fact, some of the recent research, like they're trying to encourage GPs to prescribe a lot more physical exercise for people, getting them out in the fresh air, and that can, research shows that moderate size, up to moderate exercise can help depression at that lower level. It's something that I noticed in the news very recently. Help maybe not tailored necessarily to men's needs. I'll pick back up on that. There's stigma around the subject. We know that anyway, but the dial is changing. I'll show you some stuff at the end there. And that stoicism, toxic masculinity. Again, oh wow, Jessica, thank you for sharing that. I would love to do that. That would be such an awesome thing, and I'm doing it for mine as well. So good luck to your husband there. Thank you for sharing that with us. This toxic masculinity, men have to behave like this. They shouldn't be sharing, and it's just so destructive and does not set yourself up for success. So all that's going in there, and then we get the down at the bottom of the arrow there. They're unhelpful coping mechanisms, and I think I try to use that sort of euphemistically. They are unhelpful, really, isn't it? Turning to drinking more, so you don't have to think about that, really, and then anesthetizing that element of your brain. I remember on mental health first aid, they talked about that, about the alcohol inhibiting. So but it inevitably just builds and builds. It's just really bad for you. Smoking and obviously drugs and so on, and then withdrawal. So not talking at all about stuff and not sharing and not getting that out and having a good chat about it. I always remember there's a film called Crocodile Dundee. Some of you have probably seen it years. There's a really interesting line in that about, they start talking about therapists and stuff on it. It's about a chap from Australia who ends up going into New York. It's played by Paul Hogan. There's a really interesting line about mental health in there. And he says, oh, where we come from, what I do is I tell my best mate, and then he tells everyone in the town, and it's out in the open. And it's supposed to be a joke, obviously, but there was something about that always would be about getting things out and explaining what's going on for you instead of bottling it all up. Some of the recent research, Priory, obviously quite a wealthy body, did some looking into this. It's only 1,000 men, but again, I thought it was quite interesting. And they got some quotes about why don't you come forward, or why didn't you come forward sooner? Embarrassed, got no one actually to talk to. It's a shame, really, isn't it? And I didn't want to admit I needed support. So it's all there for us to see. So that's you can find that on the Priory website if you want to dive into that. And there's endless sort of percentages and so on that. Okay, what are the main factors that are driving some of this? And I've alluded a little bit to the pandemic and so on. There's 3 elements here, and a couple of elements in here really surprised me when I really thought. But actually, on reflection, I went, yeah, I get that. I really do. So, first of all, this would not surprise you. Obviously, work and unemployment. It does play into that societal expectations of breadwinning, outdated clearly, but does the man there take it on his shoulders? I've got to be able to do this and provide, and those pressures and so on. Now, again, I said mine's stuff you can get on Mind is normally 2009 to 2019 report, which is good stuff, and it's indicating actually men aren't worried about money. Great, but we know, and I think that was a good counterpoint, that it's significantly worrying not everybody in everyone's household at the moment, and looking after each other there, because it's on people's minds all the time, and it's frightening. It is frightening. There's no doubt about it. So we know that work employment is a big piece there, because of course that then relates to finances, and finances comes up all the time in the research about people worrying about money and not seeing a way out, and getting themselves in a terrible state about that. So that was the first one, and I think we were like, yeah, I get that, Ed. That's spot on. This one really surprised me. This was me a few weeks ago. Obviously, I've had a lot of paper around. Physical appearance, but well, I thought more about it. I do get that. That it does affect men's mental health, because it's linked to poor mental health, eating problems, not eating properly, fad dieting, I guess, over exercising, and steroid misuse. We got involved in a really interesting conversation yesterday about hair loss as well, and how that can really affect men's self-esteem, clearly as it does women as well, and the real effect of that. And I knew of one young man who had that, where his mum had to take him to the clinic, and because it was affecting his mental health, and really driving his anxiety. Because it's not, yeah, it is into the car seat there about younger people there, isn't it? But actually, they took him to a clinic, and good on them. They said, if we were to give you, because he thought he was losing his hair, and it was really starting to worry his parents, because he was obsessing about it, because he didn't feel he was attractive, and he didn't have a girlfriend at the time, and he's really, really worried about that. And what's my future if I haven't got, and these things seem irrational from the outside, but very, very rational for him. And good on the clinic, actually. He sat him down and said, if we gave you a hair transplant, we'd be transplanting it onto your forehead. You've got a fantastic head of hair. And that actually helped. So I was relieved that he was able to get that sort of, with extra support, move beyond that, and we could put, it was put to bed a bit. So I thought I'll just share that with you. But you've got to make these things come to life for you. It's a huge issue, John. Thank you. For younger generation, social media influencers. Yeah, absolutely. You've probably seen my deck, John. Then there you go. Again, for me, it's really difficult to understand this, because I don't really use social media. I've got a Facebook account, but I was a bit woeful. My visits are every 3 years, those who've watched Love Island and so on will know some of the ramifications around not supporting some of the young men and women that have been on there, the effect on their mental health, putting themselves there on social media as personalities that are being affected by some of the appalling online abuse. And of course, there's a wider dialogue here about young men and women being bullied at school, as we were. Yeah, and it's about the comparison, what is seen to be an alpha male look. Yeah, there's all sorts going on there. We used to be bullied at school, but now you get bullied at school, and you get bullied on social media, and it goes on and on and on. And we all know about some of those cases in the media. They're just absolutely heartbreaking. So yes, valid, absolutely valid for people about that. And Dr. Alex George, I say I've not seen the program, but I thought I'd share it because I think it's absolutely relevant. He was on the program studying a lot of online abuse and so on. And one of the ladies who talked to a bit yesterday said he wasn't like the traditional contestant and so on. So anyway, it's a factor. It's a factor. Look, let's move that to one side. We're talking HR heroes, which you all are here. It's the law anyway that all employers have a duty of care to make sure that they are mitigating for risk. And that duty comes under health and safety legislation. So yes, it's the law. That's quite dry. Yeah. And John, you're spot on. That's the point I'm trying to make. I find it sickening to my stomach actually to think about that for some poor boys. Oh, I've got 2 boys. Luckily, as far as I know, everything's good. But can you imagine that following people home? Awful. And the impact is catastrophic. Cost the economy, they put at 35 billion, but it could be more. It could be more. Where the point is, could they be supported better? Okay, let's put that to one side. Great. We've got about 20 minutes left. But what's about getting it more, getting men to sort of come forward a little bit more? I haven't got all the answers, but together we might we might start to understand this a bit more, as I said at the beginning. But really, what do you think? What sort of things do you think would help getting people to say more? And it can be broad. I mean, we're talking about work predominantly, but we need to. I think talking about it at work with friends, just awareness, yeah, getting it on the agenda, isn't it? As you said there, really important to talk. Just talking about this more and normal. I think I found the word. It's normalizing it, isn't it? Normalizing stuff. So yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, we're all sometimes we're up, sometimes we're down. Sometimes people need support. We need to get ourselves well. We need to look after each other. So there's a lot of things. I've listened to I've read and listened to so much, and there's a really interesting podcast, which the name of it escaped me, and they were talking about men's mental health and the things that came out from it. And also McKinsey just knocked out a really interesting article as well. Said what is known is if it can meet their preferences and it's relatively easy to access and it's meaningful and it's engaging and the narrative is there, male leaders, Jessica, this is great. Senior leaders, Kazi there too. Spot on. And that's the McKinsey article, which you can grab. Beyond Burnout, it's called. That, first of all, we've got to have the right policies and procedures, and we've got to be talking about that in more of putting for men to talk to. Yeah, that's an interesting point there, Rebecca, about attracting more men to the therapy talking type role as well, that men might not feel comfortable with that. Do they know that they can talk to another man? That might be interesting. Easy access. I can draw on what I want that works for me and go, well, that's okay. That's quite interesting. I think, and it's easy to, oh yeah, I can just go and do that. It's something that comes across those two. And then this McKinsey article that's just come out says, look, you've got to embed the conversation, as you just told me, across the whole organization. You've got to normalize this. And actually, it's about having non-toxic organizations as well, where it does have toxic masculinity in it. It has people that actually genuinely care for each other and actually say, look, I'm concerned. You seem really really down at the moment, and it has to be at all levels and a reasonable working culture. So it all has to be going on at the same time. It's all very well putting a policy out, isn't it? It's got to be got to live and breathe and be reiterated and be there. So great stuff. So we're into the sort of final bits really about this is more internal if stuff is happening at the moment. There's lots of you'll know some of this as professionals anyway, that there's lots of triggers that distress people around poor communication at work. Lone working is always a worry. Massively unmanageable workloads, unrealistic, high pressure environments are going to be triggered, and people working long hours and noticing, we talked about that yesterday, noticing emails coming in the middle of the night. It's like, well, why aren't you asleep, or why aren't you resting at that time at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and calling that out of the boss. Because if those happen, then we see some of this. We might not see some of this. We might not notice some of the internal physical ones there. I get that, of course, but we can notice some of the other ones. And, I alluded to some of the potentially different male manifestations of some of this, the behavioural ones there. Working for far longer hours, one of the things that came out is that people just literally working, trying to distract themselves because they feel so bad. It's about most people prefer a straight approach and saying, look, they don't feel confident in coming forward, so you're going to have to broach that subject with them because you've noticed something. There's always a question hanging in the air. In fact, I did some hybrid training this week, all more difficult when you've got remote, about really reading them, reading what's going on at the moment for them. Regular check-ins, of course, regular catch-ups and supervision, and making sure that they are absolutely, machine workshopped into the diary, that they cannot be taken, they only get moved, they're never out of the diary. I must talk to you on a regular basis to make sure that you're okay, without clearly, harassing people, but simple, open, non-judgmental, and be flexible. It can be something fairly mild that's manageable, of course, all the way through to, and I'm not going to deep dive into that. CIPD's got some great guidance on what to do if you think this is a major situation. That's quite an extreme conversation we're not going to have now, but there's lots and lots of guidance you can find online about what do you do in that moment? But the whole point is you've got to be flexible in terms of understanding what's going on there. And you've got to be on your toes if you're having that conversation yourself, which is all about, how do we solve this? It's about having conversations and testing the water with people. I'm going to show you a wellness action plan in a moment. But workplace adjustments don't have to be vast for people. Yeah, you do absolutely there. You need to upskill managers. They're not frightened. There's not a lot of confidence out there how to help. And I think that's where I come on to some mental health first aiders can also be part of that. And I'll show you a couple of businesses here where they actually do training for people so they can sort of handle those situations sufficiently that they can start thinking like, okay, I've got this, I've started a narrative. Okay, what do I need to do now? But you're absolutely right. If it's not even on the agenda, people are like, oh, I'm not sure what I have to do here. And it's about encouraging and reassuring. First of all, encouraging, have they spoken to their GP? Do you have an employee assistance program? LHH does, so free counselling. And actually, reassuring them that you only share really what needs to be shared with the wider team. And actually, what support is there if they're not feeling great, and knowing that as a boss, or that those leaders knowing this is what we have available. And I'll come on to say what we do in a moment. There's lots and lots of practical support here that can really help people saying, okay, can we find somewhere else? If they're working at home, can we look at just lightening the load a little bit for you, moving you on to something else that's a little bit more manageable for you at the moment? Time off, a buddy. There's lots of little practical adjustments that can be made. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to press the sort of, the massive alarm button here. It can be eventually very practical support that can be managed. I'll show you that. What I'm going to do is I will share with you a document as we're going through called the core standards and how to embed that as I'm talking. That is how to embed the core. Okay, I really want to get this mental health awareness in, and I really want the narrative there. So therefore, men, and clearly women as well. So workplace wellness action plans have been around for a while, and it's actually whether you've got a mental health problem or not. It's about what works for me, how I like to work, and understanding what will keep you well, because it's wellness at the end of the day. So I thought it was really interesting I came across these wellness action plans. We don't use them at LHH. It's a conversation we're having about. For those that really need them, you can find templates online, and it's about what helps you, keeps you mentally strong and fit. Oh, okay, so immediately you're starting a conversation there with your boss and saying, what really does stress you out? Well, an email at 1 o'clock in the morning for a start, even if you say I don't expect a reply, it still stresses me. So there could be things there that you can talk about, and what are the early warning, how can we get you better, what steps, and so on. So one of the practical tools is sometimes thinking about in an organisation wellness action plans for everyone, if that's appropriate. But I found this Thriving at Work Report 2017. This was about how to get mental health awareness throughout an organisation and get it really working. Absolutely superb. There's other key actions that a lot of organisations do. Promoting awareness days. Why? Because we know we've got to get men talking more about this stuff. Having mental health first aid trainings. I think we've got 25 at least within LHH. That's the London office certainly. And that there's assistance programs and people know where to access. So I know, and you keep telling, you reiterate where this stuff is. You don't just tell people once. You tell them on a regular basis where stuff actually is. So there's a couple of things there that you can already start doing. And to be honest with you, a lot of organisations. I'm just going to pull up this document for you now. And if you don't get it now, just contact the organisers and we'll get this over to you, because this is a cracking document. Absolutely superb. And I would say that, but honestly it is. Here we go. Right. There you go. Right, it's in. Let's get back to the slides. This Thriving at Work report 2017 is commissioned by the government because they're so worried about the lack of support in organisations. And it's basically got 6 core standards with supplementary standards. It's a really easy read. Look at some stuff and go, this is just mind-blowing. Really straightforward about practical things you can do. these are core standards to make sure that people can thrive at work and look after their mental health. And of course, that just completely ties into making sure that we're tackling some of the root causes of the essay title today. Core standard 1 is about planning the whole thing out in the culture. 2 is about building awareness. I've highlighted words here because I'm conscious there's a lot of text here. And of course, 3 is about having open conversations with people and making sure end to end, from recruitment all the way through the life cycle that they're being looked after. But of course, then it dials into 4 and 5, which I really like, about providing good and reasonable working conditions for people. Reasonable, not unreasonable. And actually, as you've rightly said, and again, really appreciate some of the stuff coming in there. What about the people leaders? Have they got the right training? Do they know what to do? So train and support line managers in effective management practices around mental health. And 6, of course, is gathering that data and making sure that you're looking at that. Obviously, there's something that will be very confidential. The organisation is aware of what's going on in the organisation. That's called the Thrive at Work. So the practical tool you take away from the conversation you have with me today really is having a review of that document if you wish to have a look at it. That's just for your reflection. Are you naught or are you at 100%? I got a little film for you I want to show at the end, so I do want to get to it. I really like it. And I've got to leave you. I've got to leave you feeling reasonably well at the end of this. Yeah, how was your mental health awareness discussion? I feel so depressed now. The narrative is changing. Whether you're a royalist or not, this isn't a conversation around that. But key figures coming forward and saying that this has happened to me. This has been my challenge, I think does help, because people do rally to that, go, oh, well, we can talk about it. And we know that Prince William had lost his mother at a young age and had, the trauma of having to go through that sort of ritual of following the gun carriage, and dearie me. But also, some of you will know, of course, as a helicopter rescue pilot, recovering dead children is also affected him very badly, and he had to come forward and get some help there. So I think he feels really strongly about that. I think it's all very genuine. So I think that starts the narrative there. People, and Heads Together is a male mental health initiative there, which he is a patron of. It is changing. Again, this counselling society says, look, it is more socially acceptable now than 5 years ago, and they are more aware. And there is less stigma, which I think is, and actually it's fairly recent research as well. So I think that gives us some really good stuff here. It's easier for me clearly to access what we're doing, and I was talking to the head of HR yesterday, who was in the session. We had a good candid conversation, and really trying to make sure that 23 of our line managers are mental health aware, so they've had training on what to do. And supported by first aiders. Lots of you will be well aware of the mental health first aid initiative. It's great. It's a cracking. I think I did 2 days. I went to Exeter University to do mine. It's quite a leveler, I'll tell you, but it's really good, and it gives you some really good tools and tips to practically help people have a good chat. And these are some of the things that we're doing here. We've got our wellbeing week next week. We're doing mindfulness and self-compassion, some stuff on financial well-being for people as well, and some mental health awareness. So some of the stuff that we're doing, we've just put out a whole intranet thing, and we're constantly publicizing it about, you can get well-being apps off that, and you can claim that back. So we're doing our best at our end there, and that's only happened this year really, but we've really turned the circle on that. There are other companies out there. Innocent Drinks look like they're doing some great stuff. They do 2 training courses, one tailored to the leadership, and one for their team as well, which I thought was really great as well. So and trying to get people physically active, because we know that really helps. We know that helps as much as where physically they're able to do that. Unilever's got some good stuff as well, and again they do this sort of purpose workshop to think, what do I actually want? Because of course purpose drives motivation makes you feel good, and then and doing a number of different sort of inputs around the physical, mental, emotional and purposeful elements there. So yeah, so there's a few organisations doing some really nice stuff there. Now, let me just explain some of these if you've not seen them before, and I apologise if you have. You'll all be familiar with some of the Lynx adverts from years ago, and they're incredibly sort of, I'm a man, I spray this on, and then everybody comes flocking. And Lynx found that narrative was just becoming a disaster for them. So they've changed their narrative, and you can find it on YouTube. It's called "Find Your Magic," is their latest one, and about imperfecting yourself, which I really like and I applaud. And the "Find Your Magic" is basically this young lady's kissing his nose because he's got a big nose apparently. It doesn't look that big to me, but apparently he's got quite a big nose. And they've all got something different about them, and it's like find your difference. Be different. You don't have to be like that as a man. You can be different. I thought this is great. This chap above campaigned about living miserably. I think he was on Love Island, and he's trying to make a bit light of it about don't bottle things up. So he's doing that with Top Man. The one on the left there, those are mannequins. I use the word mannequin is better than another word. I think that represents 12 men a day with ITV Studios. I thought that was good. And the one down the bottom, which I'm going to just show you to sort of finish off, is the Harry's advert. Harry's do razors. They're a US brand. And just bear with it. It's only 2 minutes long. You think it's going one way, and then it goes the other way about what does it mean to be a man. So I'm going to share that as a sort of one of the sort of concluding bits there, because I really like it. I'll just turn it up a bit for you. Can somebody just type yes if you can hear it, please? Otherwise, I'll move on. Thank you. Thank you, Nadine, Emily. Brilliant. You're a star. Thank you.
It's okay. You don't have to hide. I was just talking to your overlord here and explaining my mission.
That's not my overlord. That's just a squirrel.
Oh. That's not what he said. I'm here for a short time to learn about this planet and its most advanced life form.
Mankind.
Are you a man?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a man.
Could you teach me how to be a man?
Yeah, totally. You just can't go around looking like that. You need to blend in. You look like a science experiment or something. And you can't walk like that. Walk like this. Men walk with confidence. You gotta be quiet.
Men are quiet.
No, my mom thinks I'm at school. A real man wants to be taken seriously. Men are supposed to take care of themselves.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Quick, hide.
He's doing great. Yeah, I mean, sometimes things are hard. He's, But really, yeah, really, things are great. They are.
Here, you need to shave. Men shave.
Are you going to?
I already did this morning. No. Men know stuff.
Like what?
Like cars, sports, how to give a good handshake. A man has to be strong.
Strong how?
Like brave. A man shouldn't be afraid of anything.
Are you ever afraid?
Sometimes. I mean, there really aren't any rules, honestly. Can I ask you something? Have you seen my dad up there? The truth is, there's no one way to be a man.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for bearing with me on that. I found that initially I was like, where's this going when I first watched it? And I thought, no, I can, I liked it. So there we go. I wanted to share it. There we go. We need to get men talking. And people do say that they wish to come forward sooner. And it's about role models and conversations, openness and education throughout, isn't it? A place where everyone can share and everyone plays a part in that, and thanking people for coming forward. I think we've started the conversation. I think it will continue. So there we have it. We've run slightly over time. I do apologise for that. My core reference for you today is that how to implement core mental health standards at work. It seemed to get people quite excited yesterday. So again, I've shared it for you because they said, great, I'll take that away and use some of it. And that's what you're here to do. So thank you very much for engaging and really being candid with you, sharing some of your experience as well, because it really brought the session. So thank you so much for your time. And I hope maybe I might see you on the next session later on if you're dialing in on. So thank you very much indeed. So time for a little bit of lunch, and then on this afternoon, I'm doing a resilience one, which actually ties in a little bit with this. So thank you so much, Stevie. Thank you very much for that. I really, really appreciate your comments. And yeah, have a look at the links advert as well. That being different, I thought, yeah, that's a bit more like it really. So thank you. Thanks very much, everyone. Look after yourselves, and thanks for supporting us and coming along and sharing in the conversation here today. Thank you. Bye-bye.